Welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. We are talking about bills, and more bills. There is a lot of discussion about different ways we could change our democracy in the 2024 legislative session. So even though the Washington Voices Act isn't going to make it any further this year, there's a lot of talk happening, and we want to get you up to speed on the conversations that are still going on. So before we get you to our guest panelists, I want to share a few things about how tonight's event is going to go. If you have questions, drop those questions in the Q&A feature. There should be a little button on the bottom of your screen. It should have like a little like people talking in a comic strip sort of speech bubble thing. Click on that, enter your question, and we will try to either answer it directly to you via text, or we will answer it on the video. If you don't get your question answered tonight, feel free to email us at info@fairvotewa.org and we can get you an answer. Also, since we don't have a chat feature, if you want to join our Slack, I will put an invite link to our Slack in the chat, and you can join our Slack and talk about this event right on our Slack channel. With that, my name is Ben Chapman. I'm Fairfield Washington's communications manager, and I want to introduce Carrie Bull, our organizing manager, who is going to take it away from here. So let's spotlight Carrie. Go for it, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Ben. Hi, everyone. Great to see you. My name is Carrie Bull. I'm the organizing manager here at Fairfield Washington, and I am delighted to bring some guests to the fore. They are part of our coalitions that we work in, and I'm going to jump right in. We'll start with Jazmine Smith. Jazmine is the political director at the Washington Bus. She is an educator, passionate about advocacy and organizing, who graduated from Western Washington University, and from there has served in the Peace Corps and worked in public education for several years. As I mentioned, she's now the political director at the Washington Bus. Next, I'd like to bring on Cindy Black, who is the executive director of Fixed Democracy First, and she has been since 2016. She was also the campaign director for WAMEN's successful statewide 2016 ballot initiative 735, which made Washington the 18th state to call for the U.S. constitutional amendment to end court decisions like Citizens United. Cindy is committed to helping pass pro-democracy legislation locally and nationally, as well as building an active citizens movement through an ongoing coalition, building common sense reforms and public outreach. Thank you, Cindy, for being with us. And finally, I will bring on Jake Garcia. Jake is the policy director for the Latino Community Fund of Washington. He hails from Vancouver, Washington, where he cut his teeth organizing farmers and farm workers and working for various state and local political campaigns. Now, Jake spends his time lobbying for Latinx community priorities and developing public policy to reduce poverty. Welcome, Jake. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. All right, so first, now that I've just read your bios, I'd love to go around and have you introduce yourselves to tell us a little bit more about the missions of your organizations and anything else you'd like to share with us. I'll start with Jazmine.
Hi all, my name's Jazmine, she, they pronouns, political manager at the Washington Bus, and been really excited to work on several democracy-related bills over the last few years with the bus, but also other bills that touch the lives of young people, because that's our focus, of young people by young people and for young people, or for all people across Washington, and the intersectionality between the issues that hit our day to day and how we are able to advocate on them. Yeah, and what else to add? So I'll pass it over to Cindy.
Thanks, Jazmine. Hi, everyone. As Carrie mentioned, I'm Cindy Black. I'm the Executive Director of Fixed Democracy First. Those of you that don't know about Fixed Democracy First, we are a pro-democracy, nonpartisan, statewide organization here in Washington. And so we work on pretty much everything democracy. So ranked choice voting and proportional representation, but also campaign finance reform, voting rights and access, civic education, all of those good things that are really help make our democracy stronger. And then I'll hand it over to Jake.
Thank you, Cindy. Well, hey, everybody. Like Carrie said, I'm Jake Garcia. I'm the policy director at Latino Community Fund. Latino Community Fund, for the past 11 years, has been engaging individuals all across Washington state who identify as Latino or Latinx to really bring economic empowerment to their communities. Over the past decade or so, we've really targeted down in King, Snohomish, and Pierce counties to provide access to healthcare and environmental justice education. On the other side of the mountains in Yakima and Eastern Washington as well, we've empowered about 20,000 community leaders to become more civically engaged through Legislative Week of Action, as well as our Youth Lobby Day. So bringing folks to Olympia to have their voices heard. We also, our fund is in our name, so we also make sure that we're spreading money equitably across our communities. In fact, we've been able to hand out, I think, about a little over $500,000 in community grants and scholarships to local organizations that serve the Latino community, and thereby improving the quality of life for all Washingtonians.
That's incredible. I'm so happy to have all three of you with us and to be working on the same team as you. Jazmine, you're here to talk about a bill that would allow municipalities to change their elections from odd years to even years. Can you share a little bit more about what this bill does and why it's important?
Yeah, this bill has gone through a couple different versions just in this biennium, last year plus this year, the combination of the legislative sessions. First, Senator Valdez introduced a bill that would give cities and towns the freedom to, again, move their elections from odd years to even years. It be fully opt-in. And then at the beginning of this session, then his seatmate, Representative Farvar, introduced a companion bill, which means it has identical language. And after that, we also got to see the bill that has actually been moving from Representative Gregerson, who has worked on this issue before, that would not only do that, give permission for cities to make that movement, but then originally it would also allow, or it would make it so that if a jurisdiction has really low voter turnout year after year after year, if they have 8 odd years of not having voter turnout above 40%, then that you're out of chances and you have to move it over. But that was removed, and in the House side of when it was heard and went through the House State Government Committee. Now it also just had a change when it was passed out of the Senate State Government Committee, where it would only apply to cities and towns specifically, in that it excludes special purpose districts. So like the port, for example, could not make that change if they wanted to. So that's one of the changes that was made, and it also made it so that both the legislative body and the people have to approve of the change to move it from odd years to even years. So what that would practically mean is that Seattle could have, under the way that the bill was previously written, the voters could enact a charter amendment that, if it passed, would move the elections. However, now it needs to go through both the city council and the people as well. So that's kind of where it's at. It's gone through a lot of different versions, and it'll probably change some more before it's passed. It's got a hearing in Ways and Means tomorrow, which is a new step that it didn't have to go through before, but I'm excited to keep advocating for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your good work. We're excited to see eventually more voter turnout on even years, because we get to all vote on the same year. All right, Jake, you are working on a voter verification pilot bill. Can you talk to us about what that means?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So this is another bill that is being or has been run by Senator Valdez. And we know that Latinx and communities of color are often the most disproportionately impacted by ballot rejection. They have some of the highest rates. Our communities have some of the highest rates of ballot rejection in the state. And this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart, to my organization's heart. It's something that we've successfully litigated in Yakima County and in other central Washington counties. And it's why we're advocating for 6269, so we can reduce these rejection rates and really ensure voters of color, young voters, disabled voters have their voices heard, and we're able to reduce the burden on our communities. And so what 6269 does is it requires the Secretary of State to establish an alternative verification options pilot project. That's a lot of words in a row that sound really like technical and like kind of boring, right? But what it does is it actually allows for the testing of different methods for voter verification, right? So when you think of voter verification, you usually think of somebody at the auditor's office in your county sending you a piece of mail saying, hey, we had to like reject your ballot because we couldn't verify that it was you. And so what they'll do is they'll often have you go back into the county auditor's office and go through this whole drawn out process. What we want to see and what this bill aims to do is allow for ballots that were incorrectly signed or unverified to be able to test out different ways to verify that's who the voter is and that they were intending to fill out that ballot. And so it will ensure that different options are available. Examples could be, let's say when you get locked out of your Gmail and you have a multi-factor authentication, that could be an option that counties use, right? And there's another option where you can also utilize data verification where, you just give a piece of identifying information and it spares you from having to write out your signature again and have to have that go back on file and again alleviate some of that burden. And so there's also the step up method that's gaining a lot of traction in other states, and it combines 2 or more verification methods, and then the voter will be able to choose which one, and that allows for flexibility and really an option for everybody. So it's currently waiting to be added to the floor calendar right now in the House of Representatives, and so we're just waiting on a vote now. But it's a good little bill that really starts to address and innovate the ways that we verify how folks are voting.
That is really cool. I think there are so many creative ways to solve our problems, and I love seeing that creativity and, like you said, innovation come into the democracy space. It's 2024, we're ready. Jake, you're also working on ballot curing. What is ballot curing? Why is it important? And what is going on with the bill?
Yeah, so ballot curing is part of the really the nuts and bolts process of how we ensure folks are having their voices heard and making sure their ballots are counted, right? Like we want to make sure at the end of the day that when folks fill out their ballot, even if they don't have the right signature on there, even if their ballot is rejected, that we are still able to have their voices heard in our democracy. And so ballot curing is what happens if a voter, neglects to sign their ballot or their signature doesn't match the signature on their registration file. And then the county auditor has to notify the voter and let them know about the procedures that they're about to have to go through. And if their ballot isn't cured, it's rejected. And we've already talked about how this is a really disproportionate problem for voters of color. And so what 5890 does, Senate Bill 5890 is another bill from Senator Valdez. And what it does is it works on 2 levels at the state and county level to address shortcomings in ballot curing. Right now, auditors aren't required to do all that much in terms of contacting the affected voter other than sending out a piece of mail, right? And we know that's not always the most effective way to contact folks, especially in the 21st century, right? So as what this bill does is it allows for auditors or I'm sorry, it allows for, yeah, county auditors to be able to reach out to folks through email or through phone if it's on their registration. And it also allows for the state to be able to start to develop or I'm sorry, not the state, the county, to be able to develop outreach plans, to be able to get this information out to community and say, hey, here's what we're doing to make sure that your ballot isn't rejected. Here's how we can educate folks about signature verification requirements. And we really like the outreach plan because the materials that are prepared for it specifically will have to use or should use plain language, but have to be produced in English, Spanish, and any other language that's required by the Federal Voting Rights Act. And then on the state level, it directs the Secretary of State's office to adopt statewide standards for signature verification, plus a training manual for implementing the new standards, and then tools to confirm that counties are complying with these new standards. It also creates a work group. It really pulls together all the various levels of government to ensure that we are verifying and curing ballots and reducing ballot rejections all through collaborative community work. And so that's why we're really pushing for it. We love the community piece in this. And some late breaking news actually is that as of this afternoon, it passed unanimously off the House floor, and it'll be heading to the governor's desk very shortly.
Wow, congratulations. That is huge. And that is going to be huge for so many candidates in tight races. It's going to be huge for voters. Congratulations. Thank you for that work. That's really thrilling. All right, Cindy, we have invited you here to share a bit about a couple of different campaign finance bills that have been discussed this year.
Yeah, I included a few other bills too, so I'm going to just share my screen real quick and go through these quickly. And in addition to all the bills that Jazmine and Jake just shared, because we support those as well, there are several other bills that we've been keeping an eye on that are still alive. And they don't get as much attention, but we think they're important and can add small steps to making democracy better. One is SCR 8414, which would create a joint select committee on civic health that's in House rules right now. So to help combat polarization and things like this would be a committee that makes up a variety of different people in different offices and in the legislature to work on how we can improve civic health in general, which is really important. House Bill 1962 improves voter registration list accuracy by when somebody changes their address in the state. Oftentimes when they get to the new county, they have to fill out a new registration form, but this would enable counties to work together for address changes and keep those up to date so people will get their ballots when they're mailed out. So this is an improvement to the voter registration process when people move within state, not out of state, but when they move within the state. And then Senate Bill 5843 is about security breaches of election systems and election processes, because we've seen a lot of outside influences trying to sabotage our election systems and election security. And so this would just add some more components to that. And I will put some links in the chat that you can check out each bill if you want to get more in the weeds on it. But this is going to improve some election security stuff. And then Senate Bill 5856 is about voter registration challenges. We've seen a lot of counties getting a lot more challenges on and individuals about their voter registration. And so this is going to be setting some parameters around how you do a voter registration challenge and how the auditors need to respond to that to make it a little bit better, because some auditors are getting inundated with a lot of voter registration challenges based on past misinformation around election fraud and things like this. So this is going to help that process. And then a couple of campaign finance bills that are still alive is Senate Bill 5284, and this bill has gone through a lot of iterations over the last two sessions, and it may go through, as Jazmine mentioned before, bills are still going to get amended all the way to the floor, and so we never know exactly what that bill is going to look like until the very end. And the same is with this bill in particular. It's had a lot of different things. It started as a PDC request bill. The PDC is our Public Disclosure Commission, and pretty much most of that language has been taken out, and now it's whittled down to requiring people that buy political ads to disclose to the commercial advertiser that it is a political ad. And this is hoping to enable people to do digital advertising, because right now Facebook is refusing to do that because of our requirements in the state. And so I imagine this bill is going to get some other amendments down the road. So we're not sure what that's going to look like at the end, but right now that's where it stands. And then another simple bill that doesn't get a lot of attention is right now, yard signs and smaller campaign signs, you don't have to list who paid for that sign. So this would enable more information on those signs to say paid for by. And so there's going to be some amendments to that one as well. And then the election worker harassment bill did pass with bipartisan support. And this is House Bill 1241. And this addresses harassment of election officials. It creates a Class C felony for harassing election officials. And it also allows election workers to apply for the address confidentiality program that get harassed. So this has some mixed feelings about that because people didn't want to create a new felony, but there was need to protect our election workers, and so this went forward. And then there's quite a few bills that didn't go through that we've been watching. We know about the Voices Act. Also, Senate Bill 5993, which we really considered a ranked choice voting poison pill bill because it would allow any voter to file an action against a local jurisdiction if they didn't feel like they got enough information about a new voting system like ranked choice voting. So we're happy that one didn't go through. Unfortunately, our full voting rights restoration bill didn't go through. That would enable people to vote while they're in prison. We're still going to be working on that one. And then a couple campaign finance bills that are People Powered Elections Washington Coalition, which Fixed Democracy First and the Bus and others are members of. We were trying to get a ban on foreign influence corporations from donating to elections, similar to the Seattle ordinance that passed in 2020. But I think a lot of moneyed and business interests squashed that bill, so we weren't able to get that through. And then also we're working on a campaign finance bill that would enable democracy vouchers for legislative races, similar to the Seattle voucher program. And unfortunately, we didn't even get a hearing on that, but we're going to keep working on that one. And then there was a couple other bills in particular, this one I was sad it didn't go through. It did pass the House, but it did not go through the Senate, to expand increased language access and assistance, bringing it down to half what was required with the Voting Rights Act, because the Voting Rights Act requires a jurisdiction that has at least 5% people that of a certain language to get voting materials, and this would have lowered that to 2.5%, but fortunately it did not get out of the Senate. And then there was a bill about competing ballot measures, similar to the Seattle, when the ranked choice voting was on the bill. They had this question about, should we change our system? And then you had to pick one of them, and it was really unclear. So this bill would have made that a lot simpler. So to allow jurisdictions to put both of them head up against each other on the ballot instead. So I will stop sharing there. I know that was a lot of information, but just wanted to give you an update on some of the bills that are still alive and some that, let's just say they're not anymore.
Well, you gave us a heads up at the beginning. Fixed Democracy First works on all democracy reform. So you gave us fair warning. Thank you for that. I have a question for all three of you now, and I'll start with Jazmine, but have you found any surprise support from any unexpected allies as you've been working on your bills to change elections, municipal elections from odd years to even years?
Ooh, Not necessarily surprise support from unexpected allies, because I think a lot of people can, should, and would be aligned with having greater voter turnout. I would say that it's been surprising more to see people hop around from House to Senate on whether or not they support the same bill, essentially. And as it goes through the life cycle. And I think another interesting dynamic that I've kind of noticed on the side is when council members and the cities that they represent are in discord about whether or not they support a bill or what the stance is and whatnot. So that it isn't just limited to even near elections, but anything that impacts cities. But yeah, I mean, I come at it from an optimistic point of view where everything should have the support of everyone. Like, these are good bills. These are more democracy is great.
I love that. I love that. You can't be surprised because it's just a good bill that everyone should love. All right, Jake, have you had any surprise supporters working to cure ballots and to introduce voter verification?
Yeah, I think it's not so much like Jazz was saying, like so much of a surprise as it was a welcomed boost in terms of who we have pulling on the same end of the rope as us. And honestly, it's folks who have had their ballots rejected in the past or have faced disproportionate impact because of that. I would say those folks coming out and testifying, it's not surprising, right? They don't want to see this happen to other people as well, but it's welcomed, and it is most certainly welcomed when we have folks on the other side, saying, "Hey, this is just going to make more people eligible to vote who shouldn't be voting." But in reality, we know who's trying to vote, and it's folks who just want to have their voices heard. So that's been a welcomed addition to the coalition of the willing.
Very cool. I love that. I love that. Cindy, have you found any surprise supporters in all of the advocacy work you're doing?
One of, I think, the most surprising thing is how much Republican support we've had on some of these bills, like the ballot curing bill, the election harassment, and a few other election security bills. In the past, we've seen some resistance from the Republican side to move forward with these. So it was a pleasant surprise to see so many of them get behind some of these bills, and add some actual pretty good amendments along the way here and there. So, so overall, I thought that was good for democracy to see that, because these are really nonpartisan type reforms.
Absolutely. That is a really special thing about working on democracy reform is we're here for voters. We are all pro-voter here. And we just want our elected officials to be represented by the people who live in the state. Excellent. Well, my next question is, what have opponents been saying about any of your democracy-related bills? I know what our opponents say, and they've had their say this year. So let me start backwards. I'll start with you, Cindy. What have opponents been saying?
Well, there have been some more far right opponents to some of the bills that had just kind of popped up over the last couple of sessions that never used to have a lot of attention on some of these bills, but we see a lot of people signing in con. And when you look at some of their emails that they send out, their reasoning seems really peculiar. And so that's really disheartening to see some of that, including around the Voices Act and some of these other bills that they've been pushing back on. I won't name names, but I think some of us know who we're talking about here. That they've really been pushing back and sending out some really outrageous emails around what these bills will actually do. And when you hear some of their testimony, you're like, they don't really understand this bill. Or they wouldn't be saying what they're saying. So that's been different.
Definitely. Thank you. Jake, I'll head to you next. What have opponents, if you have any, maybe you don't have any, opponents been saying about your democracy-related bills?
I'll echo what Cindy said. Just, it's been really an array of, I would say, unfounded claims around folks who should or shouldn't or are voting legally or not. It's really a conversation that's found in xenophobia, frankly. And I think there's been a lot of misinformation around how folks are voting, around how ballots are being cured, around the process as a whole. And right, this is a microcosm of the conversation we're seeing play out on the national level around whether our ballots are secure or not. And I think we still in Washington have the gold standard of voting systems, and that's something we should be proud of, and really pushing back on when folks are saying, oh well, Washington, it's they might be stealing a vote or two, and it's no, we have the most secure and the best election system in the country, and it's something that we should be proud of.
It is so cool to have the best and still be working with people like you all who are still trying to make it better. I love that we are not complacent being the best. We're earning that title. Jazmine, what have opponents, if you have any, been saying about your bills?
Oh, there's plenty. And again, unfounded claims, clear like misunderstandings of the bill and what it does. Maybe they understood with the original version, and the various different changes that a bill has through its cycle can be a little bit hard to follow and track and whatnot. But I think also just repeating both claims that it's too hard for people to vote in even years because there's too much information, but also not enough information, and that it would make the ballots too long, and that they would that there would be less people voting, but time and time again is shown that this just isn't true, that even if people drop off from the top of the ballot to the bottom of the ballot, then more people are voting at the bottom of the ballot than they would have been in an odd year election. And it doesn't force any jurisdiction to do anything it doesn't want to do. It's just permissive. And that we do have the technology and we do have the ability to handle the amount of races, the amount of elections, or the amount of races in an election on a ballot. And so all of these things are refutable, and proven, and still get repeated. And so it can be a little bit frustrating to hear all of these concerns stated in testimony. It's like, that's not, I would love for you to know that that's not something you need to be worried about.
Before I go to the next question, I just want to reach out into our audience and let you know that we're coming up to audience questions. So if you have anything that's percolating in your head, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A and we will get to it. All right. Next, I love this next question because for me, it's very hopeful, but are there any bills that died this year we should expect to hear more about in 2025? And Jazmine, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, as Cindy had pointed out, we will be back and better than ever with our statewide democracy voucher expansion program. We love it. We're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep bringing it back. I'm excited to keep working on ranked choice voting and whatnot all across Washington, and see what we can do. And I mean, there's a whole list of bills that died, and so I think every single one will want to keep working on and finding that new life next year.
I too am excited to work on ranked choice voting next year. Thank you. Jake, what bills should we expect to hear more about in 2025?
Yeah, I am at the same time feeling very excited for 2025. I'm also feeling a little bit of dread talking about it now in 2024. But in all seriousness, what I'm really looking forward to is House Bill 2023 that was being run by Representative Shavers. That elections materials language accessibility bill, that is a good piece of legislation that we worked hard on. We hammered it out with the Association of County Auditors. Look for it to be back next year, and we are going to make sure it gets across the finish line in 2025.
Incredible. I'm excited for that. All right, Cindy, you have a list, but
In addition to what Jazmine and Jake said, because those are all on our list as well, but voting rights restoration, full voting rights restoration is always going to be at the top of our list until everybody can vote and deal with that. We work with Free the Vote and our our Voting Rights Restoration Coalition. So we will be back with that one. And then also, we'll also be back with our Foreign Influence Corporation bill to try to limit how much corporations that have a significant foreign ownership can invest in our elections and use their corporate treasuries to do that. So that one's going to come back as well. So, and probably everything else that we mentioned that didn't go through will definitely be it'll be the start of a new biennium, and so we'll start all over again.
That's
And
great.
and of course the ranked choice voting and hopefully PR one of these days. We'd love to see that.
We really would love to see that. It would make such an amazing impact in our communities and how we interact with government. Thank you so much.
Proportional representation, right?
Yes, thank you, Jazmine. PR stands for proportional representation, which is a way of electing folks that has more than one representative per district, and the people who are elected are proportional to the people how the votes lined up. That is a really rudimentary way to discuss that, but more on that next time. All right, last question. In your opinion, last question that we have prepared. In your opinion, do you think Washington voters should be optimistic about the future of their democracy? And I'll start with Jake. I haven't started with you yet.
Yeah, I would say we should be optimistic. And my reasoning for that is, I'm not just a Pollyanna, right? I don't want to just see the greener pastures here, but I really believe that the more conversations that we have like this, like the one we're having tonight, the more it's going to be socialized, these ideas of how we improve representation and really start to work towards having a more equitable democracy. That fills me up with hope. That is what, gets me out of the bed in the morning, that, we're going to try a little harder today. We're going to get a little bit closer to that finish line today. And so, yeah, I think there's reason to be hopeful, and I think there's reason to keep on doing this work.
Awesome. Fully agree. I think it's really special to work in a space where people are hungry for solutions and want to work together towards them. Jazmine, do you think Washington voters should be optimistic about the future of their democracy?
Oh, yeah. There are so many ways that we can take our gold level standard to the platinum level, to the diamond level, and whatnot, and so many more opportunities to enfranchise, re-enfranchise, build the best system there is so that people can feel really great about casting their vote, so that they can see representation that matches them, that matches their community. They can feel like they have their voice heard. They can feel like they're able to zoom into the legislature and tell the representatives and the committee members about their stories, and then also have that ranked choice ballot or that shows the elections office who they truly want, how they truly want to express their vote, and be able to have it in maybe like 1 or 2 even years instead of we have 5 elections this year, and it's exhausting. And to find that world where civic duty becomes civic excitement and whatnot, and that we have our voice heard. Yeah, and voice represented in its fullest potential.
I love the framing of civic excitement. That is so empowering. So thank you. Cindy, how are you feeling about the future of democracy in Washington?
I'm feeling very optimistic, and it has a lot to do with the young people that are working on these issues who are in this present right here. And that gives me a lot of hope because young people are very open to these reforms that we're trying to really get through. They're very interested in making democracy better. And I think they're going to win out. So I'm very optimistic because of that energy, that commitment, that interest in making things better. That makes me very optimistic. Yes.
Thank you so much. As you already know, I agree. All right, we have a couple of questions from the audience. If you can stick with me just a couple more minutes. We have a question from Carolyn Sayer, wondering how the legislature decides to move bills forward and which ones. It seems like some don't make it into committee, and I think we're just looking for a little bit of the why and maybe a little bit of how the sausage is made. And I will just open that up to any of you who feels excited about answering
I'm
it.
happy to go. So every will get. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had a glitch. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. No
Okay,
worries.
perfect. Every bill that's introduced, so is written, turned into the hopper and whatnot, it will get assigned to a committee, usually policy committee that best matches with the content of the bill. Everyone goes to a committee. Thing is that it has to go through a bunch of different steps to make it through the whole legislative process. And because we have a part-time legislature that's 60 days in a short year like ours and 105 days in a quote unquote long year, then there are really fast timelines that they have to get through all of these steps. So for 1932, the even year elections bill, it gets assigned to the state government committee, and then they hear from the people in one meeting, and then in a different meeting, then the committee decides if they're going to change it and if they and whether or not they're going to pass it out of the committee. And they have to do that by the policy cutoff deadline. And then if it has a money part, which it didn't on when it was on the House side, then but does now, then it also has to go through a fiscal committee. So that would be like appropriations or ways and means or transportation. Sometimes it gets to go through both, which is also, or goes through two, like as in transportation and ways and means, which we had a voting bill before that had to do that. And then it goes to the rules committee that basically decides when it goes onto the floor for a vote. And then it has to be voted on the floor before the House of Origin cutoff, and then do the whole process over again with even shorter timelines now, where it has to go through that policy committee, it has to go through that fiscal committee, rules committee, and vote it off on the floor. And then they all have to agree, and that's a lot of opportunities for the bill to die. And even if the House says, yes, we like this bill, and yes, the Senate loves this bill too, it can get stuck in that making sure everything matches up process and doesn't pass the final hurdle to go to the governor's desk. And again, lots of opportunities for bills to die. And I think like 1 in 6 make it through, 1 in 8, something like that. So a lot of dead bills on the floor.
Yeah, I'll just add too, leadership has a lot to do with whether a bill will go forward, whether it's committee leadership or leadership in one of the chambers. They can squash a bill if they choose to as well, or make it a priority. Sometimes a governor will put forward bills, or Secretary of State, or the PDC. Sometimes they get more priority, sometimes they don't, but leadership does have a lot of say oftentimes in how bills, and again, lobbying behind the doors we don't see can have an influence as well.
All right, Caroline, did you get all that? All right, next question is from Dave Richard. He's asking if I support multiple of these bills, is it a good idea to list all of them when I'm contacting my representatives, or is it more effective to focus on one? Thank you for the question. Cindy, go ahead. You look like, or no, Jake, go ahead.
Cindy and I are going to say the same thing, so go for it, Cindy.
I say it's better to do one at a time.
It is. It truly is. That way you can make sure that you're elevating one issue. You can get your rep, your senator to focus on that and really be able to ensure that that is their focus of the email. You're not pulling focus away from it, and you can really make sure you're hitting your points home.
And also in every bill page, there's a comment on this bill that when you fill out your information, your address, you can reach out directly to your representatives and senator in your district on that bill. So that's another way to express your feelings about a bill, one way or the other.
Thank you both so much. All right, we have one final question, and then we're gonna let you get back to your evening. But do you think any of the bills we're talking about tonight will help our democracy deal with the climate crisis?
I would just say better democracy helps all policies that are good. So anything we can do to strengthen democracy can help move forward other policies like climate, education, healthcare, whatever it might be.
I fully agree. Thank you so much. In fact, I know someone who is working on ranked choice voting specifically for the climate crisis. So I would say yes to that. All right, Jazmine, Cindy, Jake, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to be with us. Thank you for your work advocating for a better democracy here in Washington. We're so grateful to be in coalition and community with you. Thank you. And I'm gonna give you an imaginary round of applause from our audience. So, thank you. All right, next, I would like to bring one of our oldest and truest volunteers up to the fore with me, Patricia Raftery. Patricia is one of our volunteers who every week hosts a phone bank to reach out to members of to reach out to Fair Vote Washington supporters to make sure they either know what's going on with our legislation, how they can help, or engage them in different volunteer opportunities. Patricia also does a lot of tabling with us in the summer and sees how fun it is and how easy it is, but has identified a barrier and a solution. So Patricia, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and talk about your solution.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Patricia. I am in the Tacoma area, and it's wonderful to be here tonight. Well, I really like tabling because I love being able to talk to a lot of different people, hearing what they have to say, and seeing people get excited about ranked choice voting and bringing it to Washington. I've talked to a lot of people who are interested in tabling, but it can be difficult sometimes when you're not sure what the process is, how to apply, how that works. So Carrie has put together an easy form that anyone can fill out if you want to bring tabling to your area. To make things more streamlined and take that barrier away from tabling.
I think, Patricia, you're not giving yourself quite enough credit. So I'm gonna give it for you. Patricia has identified through working with so many people that one of the biggest barriers is the application, and has graciously offered to support that particular piece of the process. So thank you, Patricia. It's true, I did put together the Google form, but most of this is Patricia. Nicole just dropped it in the chat, so please open that link, save it in your browser somewhere, and keep in mind any festivals and fairs coming up that you think would benefit from its attendees learning about ranked choice voting, and we will be in touch with you. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Thank you. I would say farmers markets, any festivals, any sort of fairs in your area, even if you have a local library that you know often hosts events, any of those can be great places.
It's so true. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Patricia. Really appreciate all of your work with us at Faribault, Washington.
My pleasure.
Thank you. All right, and I'm going to close out tonight by thanking Ben Chapman, our communications manager. After 3.5 years, Ben is stepping away to move on to his next opportunities, and we're just so grateful for all of his hard work. There were a couple times Ben was the only employee on staff at Faribault, Washington, and he's really been holding us together and moving us forward this entire time. He does a lot of work behind the scenes that we are now going to take on. And so give us a little grace if it's not as great as it has been. Ben has really done an amazing job. We wish you well, Ben. And as you know, I expect to see you in the audience at the next roadmap. You're not off the hook that easily. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate all the chances I've had to work with everybody at Faribault, Washington. I think I worked at a few different places now, and without question, don't tell this to anyone else, but Faribault, Washington volunteers are the best, and Faribault, Washington staff are fantastic. And I have enjoyed this job so much, and I'm definitely going to still be around. And I wish you all absolutely the best. Thank you, Carrie, for running this webinar. I learned a ton. There are so many democracy bills. Many, I thought I heard of a lot of them, but there are so many. And so I think that just put it even more for me in context, like how many different things the legislature is focusing on and why it's so important that people contact the legislators about the ones that are really important to them for making this a priority. So I'm going to keep doing that as a volunteer. I'm really excited to write to legislators as a volunteer and not as a staff member. So yeah, thank you, Carrie, and thank you everyone for coming out.